morning, everyone. My name is Welcome Wilson, Jr., and I'm the Vice Chair of the Committee on Innovation, Data, and Educational Analytics. It is 9:05 a.m., and I'd like to call the October 21st Committee on Innovation, Data, and Educational Analytics meeting to order. This meeting is being held via live broadcast. Before we begin, I would like to take this opportunity to welcome those joining us via video conference and ask that they observe the following etiquette. Please state your name before you speak, mute your phone when not speaking, and keep background noise to a minimum. Members, we will begin with a roll call to ensure that we have a quorum. When I call your name, please respond and confirm that you are on the call. Ricky Raven, Stuart Stedman, Sam Torn.
Here.
Donna Williams.
Here.
Welcome Wilson here. Levi McClinney.
Here.
Please record in the minutes that we have a quorum. Agenda item number 2 is consideration of approval of the minutes from the July 22nd, 2020 committee meeting. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes, please?
So moved.
State your name when you, if you don't mind, Sam.
Sam Torn, so moved.
Do I have a second?
Donna Williams, second.
Thank you, Donna. Members, those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Motion passes. Agenda item number 3 is consideration of approval of the consent calendar. The consent calendar includes items that can be approved without comment or discussion. This allows us to save time for other items that need more of our attention. The consent items are highlighted items in gray on the agenda. Due to current circumstances, we have placed additional items on the consent calendar for this meeting. Of course, any board member can request that an agenda item be removed from the consent calendar. That will give us opportunity to discuss that item or items fully later in the meeting. We're going to vote on the consent items in 2 votes. One is the non-rule items and one the rule items. The following non-rule items are on the consent calendar for consideration. Agenda item 5F, consideration of adopting the report to the legislature on high school individual graduation committee, IGC graduates. Agenda item 5G, consideration and approval of the energy savings performance contract for Texas A&M University at Galveston. Agenda item 5H, review of facilities projects that are submitted to the coordinating board. Agenda item 5I, consideration of adopting the report to the legislature on student financial aid in Texas higher education fiscal year 2019. Agenda item 5J, consideration of adopting the staff recommendation to the committee relating to the approval of the nominated members of the Financial Aid Advisory Committee. Are there any other non-rule agenda items that anyone wants to add to the consent calendar? Are there any other non-rule agenda items that anyone wants to remove from the consent calendar? Members, may I have a motion to approve items 5F through 5J, please?
Sam Torn, so moved.
Do I have a second?
Second, Donna Williams.
Thank you, Donna. Any discussion? If not, members, those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Those opposed say no. The motion passes. Agenda item, the next of the consent calendar are agenda items 5K 1 through 7, adoption of proposed rules. Agenda item 5K 1 is consideration of adopting proposed amendments to Chapter 22, Subchapter A, Section 22.11 of Board Rules concerning general provisions. Agenda item 5K2 is consideration of adopting proposed amendments to Chapter 22, Subchapter B, Section 22.28 of Board Rules concerning provisions for the Tuition Equalization Grant Program. Agenda Item 5K3 is consideration of adopting the proposed repeal of Chapter 22, Subchapter L, Sections 22.232, 22.235, 22.238 through 22.240 and 22.242 of Board Rules, and amendments to Sections 22.225 through 22.231, 22.233, 22.234, and 22.241 of Board Rules concerning Toward Excellence, Access, and Success Texas Grant Program. Agenda Item 5K4 is consideration of adopting proposed amendments to Chapter 22, Subchapter M, Section 22.261 of Board Rules concerning Texas Educational Opportunity Grant Program. Agenda Item 5K5 is consideration of adopting the proposed repeal of Chapter 22, Subchapter Q, Sections 22.331 through 22.336 and 22.342 through 22.344 of Board Rules, and amendments to Chapter 22, Subchapter Q, Sections 22.329, 22.330, 22.339, and 22.341 concerning Texas Be On Time Loan Program. Agenda Item 5K6 is consideration of adopting proposed amendments to Chapter 23, Subchapter C, Sections 23.65 through 23.67 of Board Rules concerning Physician Education Loan Repayment Program. Agenda Item 5K7 is consideration of adopting proposed amendments to Chapter 23, Subchapter H, Sections 23.221 and 23.214 of Board Rules concerning the Peace Officer Loan Repayment Assistance Program. It's all very clear, as everybody can tell. Are there any rules that anyone wants to remove from the consent calendar? If not, do I have a motion for the approval of the proposed rule items on the consent calendar, please?
So moved. Donna Williams.
Do I have a second?
Sam Torn.
Thank you, Sam. Any discussion? Members, those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say no. The motion passes. Agenda Item 4 is public testimony on agenda items relating to the Committee on Innovation, Data, and Educational Analytics. Do we have anyone registered to testify? We do not, so we will move on to the next item. Agenda Item 5A is consideration of approval of the 60x30 text program progress report. Dr. Julie Eklund, Assistant Commissioner for Strategic Planning, will present an overview of the report and be available to answer any questions. Dr. Eklund? Is she on, Mary?
We can't hear you, Dr. Eklund.
Julie, you're muted.
Are you able to hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Yes, okay, wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members. I apologize for the audio difficulties. It's good to be with you this morning. Annually, the Coordinating Board produces a progress report on the 60x30 Tech State Plan for Higher Education. The report is due to the governor and legislators by November 1st of even years, so this year's report will be shared at the Capitol. Next slide, please. Just as a quick reminder, on this slide are the four goals of the plan. As you know, there are targets under each goal. These targeted metrics will require focus for the state to reach the goal. Next slide. There are some high notes in this year's report. mainly around the student debt goal and target. We're also encouraged that institutions continue to make progress in reducing excess semester credit hours, which can help reduce student debt and also improve time to credential. Increases in graduation rates are a good indicator that students are completing at a higher level. Also, several areas of concern. Improvement in the educated population and completion goal needs to accelerate to put the state on track to reach those two goals by 2030. The high school direct enrollment rate is lower now than when the plan began. And of course, the COVID-19 pandemic has greatly increased both the needs of students and the challenges facing higher education institutions in meeting those needs. Next slide, please. Now I'll provide a bit more detail about each goal and target. First, as you can see on the graph, the 60 by 30 educated population or attainment goal increased just 0.1 of a percentage point from 2017 to 2018. This is concerning given the over 1% increases we saw in the prior 2 years. In the report, we speculate about what may have caused this deceleration in progress. However, we know from past experience with plan metrics, including attainment data, that progress can vary from year to year and growth is not always in a straight line. Because we're bringing this report to you now in October rather than at the July meeting, I'm actually able to share that in just the last few days, the Census Bureau released their detailed one-year American Community Survey data estimates for 2019, and those include attainment data for Texas. When we add our certificate proxy to this new data, the data shows that the attainment rate for 25 to 34-year-olds with a certificate or degree increased 1.7 percentage points since last year. And this data is truly hot off the presses, so we weren't able to get it into the slide, but I think it's very encouraging. We now, of course, need to do some deeper analysis of the new data to see what it says about in-migration of those with post-secondary credentials and other factors that affect attainment. Thank you. Next slide, please. So the completion goal increased in the most recent year to 348,000 certificates and associate bachelor's and master's degrees. This data is all for 2019, pretty much for the report. We don't have any data for 2020 and beyond, so you won't see in this presentation a reflection of any changes due to COVID. So the increases we did see for 2019 were about 2% from the prior year, and this actually represents a slowdown from the increases we'd seen prior. Overall, it translated to about 6,400 more credentials earned in Texas. We need about a 4% annual increase over the life of the plan to hit the target of 550,000 completions in 2030. Since growth has been slower in the early years of the plan, increases will need to be even greater to make up ground. And again, this is earlier data. I think it's going to be really important to keep an eye on enrollments as we move forward, which can make a difference in terms of our completion goals. I'm going to be sharing some preliminary enrollment data with you for 2020 in my next presentation, but we need increased enrollments and better completion rates if we're going to reach our goal. And then in terms of a little bit of detail, our bachelor's degree completions were on target for last year. Where we saw the slowdown was in our certificate and associate degree production. So, when the economy is strong, which it was in 2019, we do tend to see slower increases at our two-year institutions. And at least we did see somewhat of an uptick. Next slide, please. So this slide shows the completion targets that track underrepresented populations, those that we know lag and will be critical for us to reach our goals. Of note is the drop in completions for African American students. We can actually tie these directly to decreases that we saw at career schools. We didn't see them in the other sectors. For Hispanic student completions, we saw the biggest increase in 2019. We had over 5% more Hispanic student completions compared to the prior year. But we do have a long way to go if you look at our 2030 target for the Hispanic student population. Our male completions were up almost 3%, which is encouraging. Next slide, please. So our high school to college, direct high school to college target is really a key target under the completion goal. And although we have increased on the overall number of high school graduates who will go on directly to college, those numbers keep going up. the overall percentage of direct college enrollees has been dropping, and you can see it dropped down to 51% for our 2019 high school grads. A stronger pipeline work is really going to be necessary if we're going to reach this target. And without a strong high school to college pipeline, it'll be very difficult to reach our overarching attainment goal and our completion goal. Next slide, please. In terms of the student debt goal, this slide shows the average debt for undergraduates at public institutions by award level. In 2019, 45% of Texas public undergraduates graduated with debt, and that was 58% of those earning bachelor's, 30% earning associates, and 25% for certificates. Not surprisingly, the debt percentage of those with debt is lower for those shorter term credentials. Although average debt has not had large increases and debt to first year wage has remained steady, we do need to keep in mind that many students have debt above the average levels, and so that's a challenge. Students may struggle to pay back loans, especially in these times, and we know a lot of students right now are having that trouble. So it's important to look at the averages and the medians, but also to think of the students on the higher end in terms of debt. We also, of course, are always concerned about the students who do not complete. They're more likely to default, and if you don't have a credential, you don't have that higher earning potential that comes along with it. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned before, we're seeing good progress on reducing excess semester credit hours. We expect these positive trends to accelerate, particularly with some of the new initiatives that are happening around transfer in the state. And institutions really deserve a lot of credit for the great progress we've seen on this metric. Next slide. So to summarize, we are making progress, but there are areas of concern. Taking a careful look at our goals and targets in the current higher ed landscape will also be important, as we are 5 years into the plan now. This is a good point in time to pause and reflect on where we have been and where we are going. Next slide, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you, Dr. Eklund. Recognize our chairman, Mr. Stedman.
Julie, I don't know. I've been really surprised, or it's like the first time I've ever seen this slide on page 7. And maybe I have, but I've missed it. That's really fascinating. So in other words, you backed into the 2030. What is this? Completion or attainment? Anyway, whatever. But it's backed into the 2030 target for our 60 by 30 Texas goals by saying, okay, well, how many direct high school to higher education students? What's the percentage? And it's 65%, up from 50, and so it's been 52, 52, 51. Is just a math sort of like solve for the variable you want, or is that realistic? 65% direct high school to some kind of higher education. You're on mute.
Are you able to hear me now? It's muting me. You are? Okay. So it's a good question, because about a third of our pipeline in terms of getting to our completions are those students who are direct from high school to college. It's not, 80%. It's not. We have to remember that some students take longer to enroll in higher ed. We have adult students returning. We have students from private high school, students from out of state. So if we look at our pipeline, I think it's a little over a third of those coming directly from high school that we're looking to for completions. And of course, that's a pretty large amount, and it's very important that we encourage those students to enroll in higher ed. We have seen studies where they're more likely to complete and complete in an efficient way if they do go directly from high school to college. It's interesting that we see the growth in the numbers. I think we're seeing more and more high school graduates, which is encouraging for our high school, some improvements there, but we need to work harder to ensure that those students are going on to college, that we do improve that direct rate. So although it's not a direct tie from what this number looks like to get to our overall goals, we do need to make improvements in that 51%. I think this is a critical area, and we really have not seen progress in terms of the percentages. Again, the overall numbers are up. That's encouraging, but we need to do more.
I guess my question, and I didn't understand the third, because this says direct, this enrolling by fall in higher education, so it's 50%.
Yes.
I don't understand your
Yeah,
third.
the 50% of those who graduate from a public high school enroll directly in higher education in Texas. We find them in our records enrolled at any of our sectors, 2-year, 4-year, private.
Well, yeah, but anyway, but the 65%, is that just a plug number on some equation that you guys came up with, or is there a plan to get there? Because this seems to underpin the 60 by 30 Texas goals that,
Yes.
if you don't have 65% of high school graduates going directly to higher education in the fall, we're not going to make it.
Yes, we did
You
look
have the
at
product available to graduate, the people.
And we did look at numbers, and of course there were many ways to get to the final goal, but we were including that we would have increases in this population as well as increases in completions with adult populations, students who come from other than Texas public high schools, but this is an important population. So it has been of concern as we've seen these numbers be flat, and frankly, over the life of the plan.
And do we think it's economic reasons that more don't move on to college, or is it lack of awareness of the benefits, or where do you think we could, either Commissioner or Dr. Eklund, where's the low-hanging fruit that we can add value or encourage to increase those numbers?
I'm happy to respond, or Commissioner, I actually am not able to see you on the screen if you'd like to.
Julie, why don't you respond, and then I'll weigh in also.
Certainly. So I think, as I said earlier, one thing that is encouraging is that we're seeing more high school graduates. I know you saw the information for those individual graduation committees, that report that was on the consent calendar, that we are seeing more graduates coming out of our Texas public high schools, and we are seeing, percentages of those populations that might not have graduated in the past going on to higher ed, but some of those percentages are lower. So we need to be thinking about making sure students understand the value of all of the different types of higher education, post-secondary opportunities that are out there for them when they graduate from high school. And we had regional groups that were really focusing on this effort. But it's hard to say. I think the economy is certainly might be a piece of it, that we saw high school graduates. When we see high school graduates who are able to come out and easily find employment, you tend to see some summer melt there where students don't go on to higher ed if they find a good summer job. It can be more challenging for students to see the value of that direct enrollment. So I think there are a lot of factors that probably contribute to the drop in the percentage, but again, I think it's positive that we are seeing increasing numbers, and we want to continue that trend as well as to increase the percentage.
Commissioner?
So if I could just weigh in, just to underline a couple of the points that Julie made. So definitely the cost of higher education does show up as sort of the leading factor that folks will cite. So they're concerned about paying for higher ed. And also, even when the economy was doing well, we saw some troubling results in state and national surveys on folks feeling like that there was going to be return on that investment. So both worried about paying for it, and then if you do take the risk to pay for it, is the return going to be there? And so in general, folks would say they recognize higher education is important. They recognize that it would be something that would be valuable in general. They're not sure it's worth the risk for them to make that investment. And then that does speak to this other issue about advising, about understanding sort of what the pathways are that are available and how you're going to be able to get from here to there. So I think one of the things that's clear in the data is that we've got a couple of indicators we're making some marginal progress around. We might expect that as the economy slows down, we'll see typical patterns in folks wanting to enroll in higher ed to reskill and upskill. But I don't think we could count on seeing sudden increases where now we're going to see 4% year-over-year increases and be able to meet the targets. The three areas that especially jump out that are going to undermine our ability to get there are first on these direct-to-college enrollments, which we're not making progress on. We're actually losing a little ground on. Then on the productivity of the associate's degrees and our workforce credentials. So that's a lot smaller than you might expect to see for a state like Texas. And then the third thing is around these equity considerations. So we've made some progress, but we're far off the target for our Black students, for our Hispanic students, for low-income students. We can't achieve our goals unless we make dramatically better progress with those populations. So this is going to take a much more concerted, more focused effort on the advising front, on making the cost of higher education more predictable for students, and also on making sure that the return on investment is going to be there. That both we're working with the institutions so that those credentials are really going to have that value and that return that the students are going to expect, and so that they understand here's how this is going to translate into more career opportunities for you.
So I have a question. This is Sam Torn.
Yes, sir.
What do you directly attribute the decline in African American students in completion in career schools, which as I read it is the driving factor for their lack of progress?
So I'm not sure given the time period that the data was collected for. So this snapshot for the most current 60 by 30 report is really a snapshot of when the economy was much more robust. So when we had historically low unemployment rates. So typically around career and technical education programs, when the economy is strong, then the enrollments will drop because folks will sometimes you can take a couple of courses and that will enable you to get hired, and so then the programs will see some more folks doing that where they'll stop out and they'll take a job or get a better job and then maybe later come back and take another couple of courses. So at this point, I'm not sure if that's the driving factor, but that would be the first thing that I would look to.
And Commissioner, I might also add that for the career schools, we saw several close in the few years prior to this report. And so some of those students who were enrolled were not able to complete in terms of the enrollment. So I think that may also have contributed. You see a little bit of lag in the completion data from the time when those schools closed. You know, the enrollment data reflected it sooner. So that may have also contributed.
Well, that's great that that the latest data has us 1.7% ahead. That's always good. That's a big pickup. The other question I had is I think you mentioned that the debt to first year wage was 53%. How does that compare relative to other states, states where there's public universities? Is that in line with other states, or is that better or worse, or do we know?
I'm not sure of the answer to that question. Generally, Texas looks pretty good in terms of our various debt metrics, but I'll have to research that and get an answer for you unless the commissioner has some information on that.
Yeah, if you don't mind. I mean, my impression is that we provide good value in our higher ed compared to other states, and so hopefully that would translate into a better, a lower debt ratio for our graduates.
Dr. Eklund, this is Levi. I had a quick question regarding the certificates. What constitutes a certificate that's counted in this? I'm just curious if, I think a recent trend in the age of code has been doing certificates in like product management, product strategy, executive leadership. I'm just wondering if any of those things are going to be captured in here, if this is certificates that are maybe like more associate's degree based, electricians, plumbers, that sort of thing.
Thank you. That's a good question. We include in the plan currently our level 1 and level 2 workforce certificates, which are those certificates earned at our community colleges. The level 1 are generally a semester to a year, and the level 2 can be between, I think, 42 semester credit hours, so almost a year to up to 2 years. And they do include a lot of those type workforce certificates that you'd expect and that you mentioned. We don't include licensures and certifications, though many of these level 1 and level 2 certificates do lead to licensure and certification. In fact, there's some that lead to several types of certifications. We don't include the graduate certificate. You know, if you think of a bachelor's degree graduate who might be earning a certificate, we don't include those because we would capture those students when they are earning their degree, whether it's an associate or a bachelor's or higher. We have some information on those, but it's not complete.
Sure. Yeah, I was just curious about like these short, maybe a couple week, 8 weeks, maybe $3,000 or something like that, and they're short, and a lot of schools offer them like entirely online. So they've been trending highly, I think, lately with COVID. I was just curious about that. All right, thank you.
They have been. You're welcome.
So it sounds like we're of the type of credentials, we're ahead in certain categories, but the certificate and associate degrees is where we're lagging. So we, I guess, ought to focus our attention on how to improve those overall. It seems like.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd second that, Mr. Wilson. So I think through a combination of targeted financial aid, and so we'll for example, we're about to release the request for applications for GEAR funds for reskilling and upskilling that can include those short-term workforce credentials. The other thing I think that is going to be important is some strategic investments in building out capacity in some of those programs that are going to be important for individuals, important for driving the recovery, because if you look overall at our productivity of those kinds of workforce credentials by institution, we have some institutions that are doing very well, are able to put larger numbers of students through, and then and some of those might still need to expand their capacity. But then we have a lot of other institutions that are going to have to build new capabilities and build new workforce programs that are aligned with the needs of today's Texas workforce.
I know with all the companies coming to Texas, there's usually a workforce training component incentive when somebody moves here with economic incentives to where they'll provide some job training component as an incentive for different communities to move there. I don't know how we connect up with the economic development side to help encourage certificates training program with the local colleges or community colleges when someone's moving to Texas and bringing 1,000 jobs or something.
Yeah, Commissioner, it's a little bit. That's a really interesting point because it's kind of a chicken and egg thing. In other words, you need the workforce to attract the companies, but I'm not familiar with a commitment to train. So that occurs.
It does. So an example might be with Tesla coming to Austin. So they're working with both TSTC and with Austin Community College, and so there can be sort of a commitment to train, and that can have great spillover effects for the community also as you build out new kinds of training programs.
Is it too late for the chairman and I to apply for a job at Tesla? Because I want to be. If I can just get a T-shirt, I'll be cool in my kids' minds. Great. Any other questions? Thank you, Dr. Eklund. We appreciate it. Do I have a motion for the approval of the 60x30 tax progress report, please?
So moved. Donna Williams.
Second, Sam Turner.
Thank you, Sam. Second by Sam. All those in favor
Aye.
signify by aye. All those opposed say no. Motion passes. Agenda item 5B is 60 by 30 text data insight presentation on the preliminary headcount for fall 2020. Dr. Julie Eklund, Assistant Commissioner for Strategic Planning, will provide a brief report and be available to answer questions. This item is for information only. Dr. Eklund?
Yes. Okay, are you able to hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, wonderful. Every time I go on mute, I have to do something special to get off this morning. All right, well, thank you. And again, as I mentioned earlier, I'm going to be presenting on our preliminary headcount enrollment data, and this is for fall 2020. So this is very new information that we have recently gathered from our institutions. Next slide, please. So we request this data every fall from all Texas public higher education institutions, as well as from our private independent institutions. Preliminary headcount is a leading indicator for many higher education priorities, including completion, attainment, and funding calculations. So it's important this is important data that the coordinating board has gathered for many decades. This fall, it was particularly important, given the historic changes we have seen around us. We got a 100% response rate from our public and independent institutions, and we really do appreciate all the extra effort it took this year to respond. This is a very busy time for our institutions. Next slide, please. So here are the results of the fall 2020 preliminary collection compared to last year's fall certified data. Overall, we're showing an approximately 3% decrease, which is almost 50,000 students fewer than in fall 2019. So first, I'll share the more positive news. We saw almost 3% growth at our public health-related institutions, or what we call our HRIs. This could be in part the result of our new medical schools, which are now enrolling more classes of students. And also, there's high demand right now for jobs in the healthcare field. We saw a steady uptick for public universities, where enrollment grew almost 2% since last year. But the discouraging news is the almost 8% headcount enrollment decrease at our two-year community, state, and technical colleges. And finally, private and independent institutions were relatively flat from fall 2019. You can see they had a less than 1% drop here. Next slide, please. So this slide shows what our enrollment patterns have looked like at public colleges and universities since 2000. It highlights the increases we saw at community colleges the last few years. You can see we have a little uptick there after we had some stagnation, but you can clearly notice the large drop in 2020. Our two-year and four-year institutions seem to be coming together here in terms of our enrollments, which we haven't seen since the 90s, when the two-year enrollments surpassed the four-year enrollments at Texas public institutions. You can see we're 51% to 49%. Next slide, please. So in terms of enrollment declines by demographic groups, the decreases are pretty much consistent across the board. You can see we see declines in all areas. And one thing that isn't on this slide, but I think it's interesting to note, is that our international enrollments were down about 12% from last fall at universities. So that's likely had an impact, especially on some of the larger research universities. But again, even with that drop, they were up almost 2%. Next slide. And this slide shows the data by our 10 higher education regions. You can see there's a lot of red there. We had drops in all but two of our regions. You can see that's the High Plains and Southeast. The Gulf Coast declined the most, as you can see, 7%, and that was followed by the Upper Rio Grande area. Next slide, please. And in terms of regional results, when we saw these, we thought we ought to look at them by sector. The universities are actually up in every region except the Upper Rio Grande, but as you can see on this chart, public two-year state and community colleges are down in every region except the Southeast, where there was a very minor increase. And that may have been because Lamar Institute of Technology was up the most for all of our two-year state schools. So again, this is discouraging news. Next slide. The percent of male enrollment is down 1 percentage point from last year. So of course, that's an area that we focus on the plan, and we are particularly concerned with our African American male and our Hispanic male student enrollments because they're some of our lowest groups. Next, please. And so, overall, there's a lot of food for thought in these preliminary data. For our public universities, 11 institutions had decreases, but 5 of those were less than 2% drops. And we really saw the largest drops at our smaller regional institutions. We did ask for the first time ever for first time in college student enrollment counts as part of our preliminary counts. We made it voluntary because we know schools are very busy. Pretty much all the universities got back to us, and they were, in fact, up about 164 students. So they were pretty much consistent with last year in terms of their first time in college enrollment. But that story was very different for our 2-year institutions. So in terms of our 2-year schools, the community colleges have fared the worst of all the sectors that we've tracked. And I thought it was interesting, I was reading something in the Chronicle this week that all of higher education across the country reported about a 90% or a decrease at about 90% of our community colleges. And we saw exactly that in Texas. We had increases at 5 of our community college districts and decreases in 45 of them. I will add that the decrease that we saw, the largest drop we saw here that's noted here, almost 50%, that actually turns out that institutions let us know that their dual credit students started so late that they weren't able to pull them into their census date enrollment, and they're going to be reporting them to us later. So that was part of that very large decrease. But many of the schools were in the double digit range. Austin, and in terms of the first time in college, the community colleges, many of them were not able to give us that preliminary data. But for the ones I was able to look at, it was really varied. For example, Austin Community College was down over 30% in those first time in college. Glenn was down over 20%, but Collin was down just about 2%. So we were seeing variation there. When we get our full data in December and January, we'll be able to see across the board. But of course, those first time in college students are those students who are enrolling directly. Many of them are those students who are enrolling directly from high school to college. So based on what I shared with you earlier, this is really of concern that we saw at our community colleges, a lot fewer of those new students coming in. Next slide, please. So finally, as I noted, we'll have more information once we get our certified data, and we'll be able to share that with you. And again, I want to thank our institutions for providing us with these early counts, and for our coordinating board staff for their work to quickly turn this preliminary enrollment report around. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
When you say first time in college, are you talking about first family member in college, or just the first time they've entered a college?
This is just the first time we find a student entering in college. If someone is taking dual credit courses, we don't count them as first time in college. It's after high school. If someone's enrolling, for the first time once they've completed high school, that's what we count.
Got it. Any other questions for Dr. Eklund? Again, remind you this item is for information only, so we'll move on to agenda item 5C. Is an update on data infrastructure modernization project. Ms. Lori Fay, Deputy Commissioner for Data Analytics and Innovation, will provide a presentation and be available to answer any questions. This item is also for information only.
Thank you, Mr.
Fay?
Chairman. Good morning, board members, committee members. It's nice to see you again today. I'm here, you may remember that in July we introduced a project to you that we had launched a planning effort to realize the Commissioner's vision to upgrade and modernize our data infrastructure in order to provide more actionable insight to our institutions, to our stakeholders, and to the agency. Next slide, Mary. This is a brief overview that we shared in July with 3 primary goals associated with this project. Again, this is an effort to build on the strong foundation of data that the agency has historically had and continues to collect, and as well as to take a look at our combined assets that bring together the data from the Coordinating Board, the Texas Workforce Commission, and the Texas Education Agency that allows us to have a an entire look at a student's longitudinal education and workforce history. This effort is designed to realize the vision, to really tap that resource and provision it back in ways that help provide actionable intelligence to our institutions and our many stakeholders. And we have three specific goals for this effort. One, around developing and beginning implementation of a modern and flexible data architecture that delivers user-centered value, which is a core design principle of this effort, and provides that value through dynamic access, robust governance, and high security. Second, to identify and be able to deliver some high-priority reports or tools utilizing our current data. Because we have that rich resource, we believe that that's a great opportunity that we've been focused on identifying those highest priority use cases that we could deliver on today for our institution partners. And then third, we know as we implement this modern technology, this new technology, we will have to evolve our current processes. I'll let you know, Mary, if you'll click the button for me. We are in phase one still, so we are still in the planning phase, but we've made significant progress. Next slide, Mary. This planning effort actually has three projects involved with it. The first one, if you click there, the first one, stakeholder engagement and data architecture, is the one I'd like to give you a little bit of a deeper update on today. Next slide. This is the work that was planned out over 11 weeks, an 11-week project with a team from the consulting firm of Alvarez and Marsal. As you can see, the deliverables across the bottom have all been completed, and are part of what we are feeding into the next planning phase of work that we're entering. This included major documentation of our current state of systems and processes, outreach to stakeholders, and about 25 interviews that gave us important insight on pain points and priorities, and then a landscape scan that to help us better understand what across the country, what modern data infrastructures and pipelines look like, and what our options for technologies are. That all culminated in the conceptual solution design. Mary, if you'll go to the next slide. That's here. Now, we won't study this document in detail, but this was the point. Arriving at this conceptual solution design was the goal of the first 11 weeks of the project, and we have arrived there. So we're excited to be able to begin to talk about this proposed future vision and pressure test it as we enter the next phase of the project. Next slide, Mary. So quickly, the next we are continuing with our planning effort. We will enter now a second phase of more detailed planning to refine the requirements around technology and further define our priorities for delivering. We will be facing some major architectural decisions and some more detailed planning over the next three months, and so I anticipate in January that we'll be back to you with more information on things pertaining to the plan for implementation and procurement. The other two work streams are proceeding as planned. One where we are evaluating and updating all of the agency's websites. That work we will be moving into implementation mode by December, and then a third one the third project focused on our data and website governance will continue to proceed. We'll be moving forward with that and plan on beginning implementation in January. So as you can see, the project is moving with due speed. We're very excited about the opportunity to actually begin to move toward implementation over the next few months. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Sure. I remember when the commissioner first got here, he commented on the amount of data that we had internally, and how do we organize it and present it so that it's useful. I mean, we have tons of data, and how do we take that data and conform it to where stakeholders can use it? And so this is a great a great effort. Do you envision changing software-wise? Are we exploring different platforms to do this on, or do we already have the right platform to?
No, we will be. The architecture is fundamentally different than what we have today, so we will be making some significant changes in the way, in the platform, and in the types of packages that we, and applications that we use, yeah.
And is there any takeaway from phase one that we didn't anticipate or didn't know about that was surprising or that's a great question, actually. I think we always knew that we had things that inhibited our ability to really make full use of that data. And when we got in to document the current state of systems, it became very apparent why that's so difficult and why certain things require so much manual intervention in order to get accomplished. We have a very complex systems environment. We have more than 140 internal applications, and that becomes increasingly difficult to maintain and use efficiently, as you can imagine. Are there other things, Commissioner, that you would call out?
One of the things I would call out in this first phase is we've had very good stakeholder engagement. Mm-hmm. So even with all of the other issues that, of course, the systems and the institutions are dealing with, all of them have carved out as much time as we've asked to consult with us formally and informally to share kind of where they're frustrated, what they feel like might work better, to give us recommendations. I think we got more than 600 specific recommendations from institutions and systems that have fed into these scans and the solution design that we're contemplating.
Yeah, and I would say that one of the things that was very exciting was that the feedback from our institutions was very positive. It was overwhelmingly positive. They value the data that we have greatly. They see great potential in a closer partnership. And that's certainly demonstrated in their engagement in the stakeholder interview process with us, mm-hmm. and it's continuing. That excitement among our institution partners continues to build.
Mm-hmm. My only just suggestion would be that we pursue platforms that are out there far and wide, that are supported and updated, notwithstanding mm-hmm. us. Yeah. Probably avoid too much proprietary kind of stuff that costs a lot of money to change every time you need it up. So, great. Mm-hmm. Any other questions?
I had one real quick. I'm curious, who is offering like the technical assistance on this? Is it the systems that are using it, or are you reaching out and that's who you're referring to, and you're saying like, hey, what platform would be best? Should we use Power BI? Should we do something else like along those lines? As far as like the acquisition, you have API gateway and a few other things. I know we're not digging too much into this right now, but yeah. I'm just curious where the technical like advising is coming from, like what's the best way to access the data? What would be easiest for the institutions to get into and out of?
So we're supported in this planning effort by a deeply technical team from Alvarez and Marsal, okay. with a deep expertise in major platform transformations and data modernization efforts, both in higher education and other industries. So we've got great advisors along with us on this journey, and they will be continuing with us over the next 7 weeks as we make some of these key decisions.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you.
Does that make sense? Thanks.
So, so when are we going to, I mean, part of the importance here, and I don't really understand, the stakeholders. You didn't really mention the students. I didn't see them on the list, particularly high school to college students. But when can we expect a report, okay, we have this running, this is what it does, and this is how say, institutions or advisors are convincing students that, yes, that return on investment, which you said was really an impediment, right, from direct high school to college, it's a really good thing. Because I've seen data, which I sent around, from the Wall Street Journal and Bureau of Labor Statistics, it's unbelievably compelling. That is that in the COVID world, the recovery of jobs for those with college degrees and higher is so much higher. It's almost even. And then some college is better than no college. So all of that data is there. I presume, so when are we going to see it?
So some of it we're going to see very quickly. So we're working on, especially on the student-facing resources, as part of the GradText initiative, we'll be launching a new portal, intake portal, that we're working on in partnership with institutions and the Workforce Commission to curate some of those resources that we can present to students. On the kind of back-end data infrastructure that we're talking about, there are some places that we can just reflect data back to institutions along the way that's going to be more helpful to them. But to get the whole infrastructure in place, this is going to be about a year-long process, I would guess.
Yeah, yes, at least, because it's a pretty significant shift. It's sort of like replumbing your house, which is no easy undertaking, right? But we do intend to make very deliberate progress. As you know, this is one of the areas that the governor and legislative leadership allocated some of the GEAR resources to, and those, and we want to make the highest and best use of those resources as quickly as we can.
Okay, offline, I do have some plumbing leaks, and so that metaphor was actually quite poignant. We'll talk later about that.
I actually heard your plumber bought a new boat recently. Is that?
Thank you very much. Great,
thank you, Ms. Fay. And a reminder, this item was for information only. We'll move on to item 5D, is consideration of adopting the Commissioner's recommendation to the committee relating to the certification of gifts that are fundable through the Texas Research Incentive Program, TRIP, for the emerging research universities. Ms. Emily Cormier, Assistant Commissioner for Funding, will provide presentation and be available to answer any questions.
Good morning. I'm Emily Cormier, and I'll be covering the Texas Research Incentive Program, or TRIP, as it's more commonly referred to today. Statute requires the board to certify gifts as eligible to receive state funding through this program. So I'm here today to bring you the latest round of gifts for certification, but we'll first provide some background on the program. TRIP was established by the legislature in 2009 to incentivize universities to seek private gifts and donations. And to support this goal, the program provides state matching funds for gifts made to institutions for research. Only emerging research universities are eligible to receive funds through TRIP, and listed on the slide are the 8 institutions who currently participate in this program. Moving on to slide 3. Since the start of the program, the state has matched $460 million in private gifts to these universities in Texas. And gifts are matched in a tiered system where the state dollars increase as the gift amount increases. Gifts must be at least $100,000 to be matched, and the match tops out at $10 million. Also displayed on this slide is the number of gifts that have been matched since the start of the program, broken down by their gift amount. I would note that while gifts over $2 million only make up 8% of the total, they compose over half of the 460 million donations that have been provided to institutions. Moving on to slide 4.
Ms. Cormier, we keep losing the audio. You're fading from us.
Oh. Is this better?
We can't hear you at all now, ma'am.
I'm not exactly sure how to help it.
That's better. We have you back. Thank you.
Okay, great. So on this slide, you'll see that over time, the legislature has made a significant investment in this program. $360 million has been provided as a state match to institutions since the start of TRIP, although the funding has varied considerably by year. These funds are trusteed at the Higher Education Coordinating Board, who then distributes the funding to the institutions to match gifts in the order that they were received. Matching funds are distributed only up to the amount appropriated for this purpose, and it's important to note that there are more gifts available to be matched by state funds than there is funding available. Please move to slide 5. So overall, since the program has started, almost $800 million in gifts have been donated and submitted to TRIP for matching funds. This chart shows those gifts and the associated state match by year. As I mentioned, the state has matched $360 million of these gifts, and there's approximately $230 million in eligible matches that are available to be funded by the state. Please move on to the next slide. So we are here today to certify the next round of gifts received by institutions. The TRIP gifts go through an extensive review process, including a peer review where institutions can challenge submissions by other schools. The review cycle concludes with the certification of matches by the board. And for this board item, staff recommend the certification of 103 gifts worth $62 million in donations and the associated state match of $50 million. Listed on this slide is a breakdown by institution. And that concludes my remarks, and I'm happy to take any questions.
So can you walk me through, in simple terms, these? So how does a match get triggered? And I'm surprised there's $234 million of unfunded matches. So what causes that? And number one, and number two, where does it start? Does it start at the university level and then they apply, or does the student apply, or how does that work?
Yes, it starts at the university level, whereby they get an eligible donation from a donor, and they submit the information to the coordinating board. And then that information is sent out once a batch of them are received. Those are provided to all of the institutions eligible to participate in the program. And those institutions are allowed to peer review and challenge if it's an eligible donation. And then it comes back to the coordinating board for review. And then those decisions are sent out to institutions and ultimately then brought forward to the board for certification. So that's how the process generally goes. In regards to the unfunded matches, that's really a result of the fact that the amount of gifts received by these institutions has just outpaced the appropriations available for the program. And so that's subject to legislative decision and how much the legislature chooses to appropriate for this program each year.
So it would seem like it would behoove the students or the universities if we inform the legislature that there's a need for more money, there's more demand than there is product, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is something that's going to be important to keep on the radar screen, Mr. Wilson. I think this next legislative session in particular, that the board has talked before about how important the university's research missions are for the state over the long term. And typically what we see happen in a lot of states is when the budgets get tight, they'll pull back their support. Of course, in this case, we have universities that are making great progress, but they've been outpacing that match and that appropriation from the state. So we don't want to lose ground, and ideally, we would start moving in the other direction where we would get behind these institutions.
And I assume these unfunded matches are distributed all throughout the state, so it really probably affects not just one regional area, but probably all areas. So there is a benefit, I would think, to the legislative body to get this money out there.
Yeah, I just, speaking personally, I mean, I think this is a great tragedy that you have these investments that by private individuals in these emerging research institutions that aren't matched, and what a great return on investment on both parts, about both the donor and the state. So we'll hopefully make progress in the future on that.
Great. Any other questions for Ms. Comier? If not, do I have a motion for the approval of adopting the Commissioner's recommendation to the committee relating to the certification of gifts that are fundable through the Texas Research Incentive Program, TRIP, for the emerging research universities? Do I have a motion, please?
So moved, Donna Williams.
Second, Sam.
Second by Sam. Any discussion? Members, those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? No. The motion passes. Thank you, Ms. Comier. Agenda item 5E is consideration of adopting the evaluation of the Nursing Shortage Reduction Program report. General Appropriations Act, House Bill 1, Article 3, Section 28G, 86th Texas Legislature. Dr. Julie Eklund, Assistant Commissioner for Strategic Planning, will present the report and be available for questions. Dr. Eklund.
Thank you very much. I guess you can hear me, third time's the charm. My last presentation today is on the Nursing Shortage Reduction Program study. Next slide, please. Required by rider from the 86th legislative session, the study includes a review of the current program, which the coordinating board has been administering for almost 15 years. The agency was charged with examining the structure and efficiency of the program and also asked to consider other funding strategies to reduce the state's nursing shortage. Results and any recommendations are due to the legislature by November 1st. Next slide, please. As you can see by this graph, nursing graduates have more than doubled in Texas since the inception of the program, but graduates are not increasing fast enough to keep up with demand. Next slide. So a stakeholder work group was established by the rider to advise the coordinating board on the study. It included nursing deans and directors from a representative range of institutions and many representatives from state nursing associations. The group met 6 times over the past year. And I really can't say thank you enough to this group. We had strong turnouts for every meeting. Participants were engaged in the discussions and very responsive to requests from feedback. We had to move from in-person to virtual meetings in the spring, and we know how busy these individuals have been during this challenging time, but we certainly couldn't have done this work without them. Next slide, please. This slide shows some of the core challenges of the current program around which we had agreement with the work group. You will note that we call out the complexity of the program and the challenges with advancing and returning funds in the over and under 70 sub-programs. Challenges with budgeting and using funds due to a lack of consistency and predictability were common themes, as were hiring and keeping qualified instructors. Issues with finding clinical space and facilities were also frequently raised. Next slide. Now I'll turn to the recommendations around redesigning the current program. This slide shows the desirable attributes for a redesigned program. The program needs to be easier to understand and administer. It needs more consistent and predictable funding. Initial licensure nurses, those who are getting a licensure for the first time, are prioritized in the recommendation, but RN to BSN nurses are included. And 1 or more measures of quality would be included, again, in the recommended program redesign. Next slide. Now, the next 2 slides show the program components that are recommended. One is having 1 program rather than the current 3, basing the program on increases in nursing graduates. Currently, we look at enrollments and graduates. Distributing funds after current criteria are met, distributing funds after the criteria are met, not in advance, and strongly prioritizing initial licensure, which I mentioned earlier. Next slide. So it's recommended that a redesigned program include weighting for degrees earned that lead to instructional credentials to try to increase the supply of nursing instructors. And it's, again, further recommended in terms of quality measures such as NCLEX pass rates, which are nursing licensure pass rates. Thank you. Next slide. So this slide shows the list of attributes that are suggested to remain constant with the current program. And one is prohibiting participation by programs that are on probation with the State Board of Nursing. And also the work group stressed that the funds should be on top of current funding for nursing programs, and that there be flexibility on the part of institutions and programs in terms of how the funds are expended. And that's actually true now. Okay, next slide. So there were also some additional attributes that are recommended that should be considered. One is to calculate awards on a rolling average or to find other ways to smooth increases and enhance predictability in terms of the data. And another relates to ensuring that the schedules and timelines for the programs are very clear and transparent. Again, we've had a very complex program, and I think this was a priority for the work group, that we ensure that schedules and timelines are structured in a way that's very clear and transparent. Next slide, please. So this last slide highlights areas where additional ideas for reducing the nursing shortage were explored. And many of them were based on feedback from the National Health Policy Consultant with whom we contracted to assist with this study, Dr. Tim Henderson. He did a landscape analysis of activities in other states ways that other states had attempted to reduce their nursing shortages, and that analysis is provided in the appendix of the report. One key focus of the other ideas that the work group explored beyond the current program was ways to graduate and hire more nursing instructors. An idea from another state that the work group liked involved exploring ways to bring the lowest nursing instructor salaries in a region up to at least the average for that area. Nursing instructor salaries, you might be aware, are often low compared to what advanced degree nurses can make in healthcare settings, and that has likely contributed to the nursing instructor shortage. The group also discussed ideas around prioritizing initial licensure students beyond the current program, and also prioritizing clinical site development, including simulations. And in closing, I want to add that while there was consensus that exploring these additional ideas was a valuable process, the work group really prioritized analyzing and ideas for redesigning the current program in the report, those recommendations I went through earlier. The work group members were supportive of the recommendations, and the staff recommendation to the committee is for approval. Next slide, and thank you very much. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Eklund. Just a comment. I'm glad that you're recommending that it's kind of an achievement-based rewards structure, which I think will, and that it not replace existing funding, so that it does go to move the needle as much as possible. The nursing instructor shortage, just out of curiosity, it doesn't make it, so they're paid less than they would make if they were in the practice themselves. Is that, and how do we remedy that?
It's a real challenge, and you'll actually see in the report that we pulled some data so we could look at some of the differences, and some of them are striking. I know in some cases there are nursing instructors who are, work in healthcare settings and work part-time as instructors. The idea from other states was to think about having some state support to try to equalize nursing salaries, but that can have challenges as well. So it is a tough situation, and it can be particularly challenging for our two-year colleges where their salary structures are lower. But we have a situation where there are more eligible applicants for the nursing programs than the nursing programs are able to admit, and much of that has to do with these instructor shortages, as well as some shortages in terms of clinical spaces.
Thank you. Any other questions on this item? If not, do I have a motion to adopt the evaluation of the Nursing Shortage Reduction Program Report, General Appropriations Act, House Bill 1, Article 3, Section 28G, 86, Texas Legislature? Do I have a motion, please?
So moved, Sam Torn.
I have a second.
Second, Donna Williams.
Thank you, Donna. Any further discussion? If not, members, please indicate in favor by saying aye.
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 Aye. Those opposed say no. Motion passes. Thank you, Dr. Eklund. Agenda item 5F through 5K 1 through 7 were approved on the consent calendar. Agenda item 6 is adjournment. Any other comments or questions by anybody with regard to any of the items we talked about? The only note I made here is the 7.82% reduction in re-enrollment in the two-year colleges is concerning, and I don't know how we put our finger on, is it the economy, is it COVID, is it
And why Houston hit so severely when in fact you would think that with the energy, I mean the oil price down, gas price, it's kind of mediocre. There's a lot of jobs being lost. It seems like two-year college would be a good avenue.
So that does seem like something that we might see emerge, and so we're not sure that is it concern. So we've actually done some surveys around the grad tech's work to ask folks what might make them more likely to re-enroll. Number one is concern about cost, and so financial assistance. There are other kinds of things like help with career placement, or in some cases child care, that kind of thing. But there are concerns about cost. So we're hoping that this financial aid around reskilling, upskilling will help jumpstart some of those enrollments. Also, I'd point out that we saw some pretty dramatic reductions in the career and technical education programs, and some of that was because the programs weren't offering face-to-face instruction, or they only had limited face-to-face instruction that was available, especially in the summer. And so as those programs are ramping back up and starting operations again, so hopefully we'll be able to see some stronger enrollments there.
Got it. Great. Any other questions or comments? If not, do I have a motion to adjourn, please?
So moved, Donna Williams.
A second?
Second, Sam Thorne.
Thanks, Sam. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed say no. Motion passes. We are hereby adjourned. We'll now take a short break to allow staff to set up for the Committee on Academic and Workforce Success meeting. Members joining us via video conference, please remain on the call. Thank you.